How are you today? Hopefully, everyone is doing well, and it's been a good week for you. Actually, 2 weeks since I've seen you. Um, had a great time with family last week, and thank you for um, letting me go and spending that time with family and the things that were important to all of us. Now, today we are going to be looking at doing the stained glass quilting and how that goes together. And some of it applies to any quilt that you would applique. Some of the things that we're doing and how the pattern is read and that type of thing. So it applies to more than just the stained glass applique with the bias tape, and we'll get to the bias tape today. To this week we're going to set everything up, and then next week for getting the bias tape ready to go. So as always, please jump in and say hello on the chat box. Let us know if you have any questions, and kind of keep in touch with us from that. The very first thing that I want to do is I want to share with you a finish from the quilt that we did, the very first one, long time gone. This didn't she do a beautiful job? It's absolutely gorgeous. The colors work so well together, following that theme. I love the fabrics that she chose and how she put it together. Just a marvelous job. And once she gets the rest of it put together and her sashing in there, it's going to be fabulous. So I wanted to share that with you today because it is absolutely beautiful. All right. Then the first thing that I want to talk about is the pattern itself. I'm going to drop you down on the camera so that I can share with you the pattern, how I went about doing that, all of that. So please, again, if you have questions, I'll stop somewhere in the presentation and answer those for you. All right, that is rather blurry. There we go. You will have, if you ordered the pattern online, you're going to get 2 pages. And on the first page here in this red circle, it says download your pattern and it gives you the website. And you would go ahead and do that download. And once you get the download from that site, you're going to have, I think, something like 12 pages of the pattern, and so it's going to be at least 12 pages of download for just the pattern that's here underneath. So the first page is telling you the website name, so I'm going to put that aside for right now. And then this page, what I did myself, because it made sense to me. And of course, as always, if you have another way that you tackle this or go about it that makes sense for you, go for it. But this is what made sense to me. I looked at the picture. I looked at the fabrics that were given for this particular pattern. And so I started with, the first material, and I went through and found out and gave them numbers. So there are 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3, up here for the sky. So I gave it numbers 1 to 3, and I kept doing that. So for the clouds, the white fabric that you have in there, then it goes to the pathway, and I went through and put the numbers that I was going to give each placeholder for the pattern. That was very helpful to me as I worked a little bit later on. So now the next part that comes in here comes with putting the pattern together. There are these little arrows on each one, and as they came off the printer for me at home, I double checked to make sure that they were full size. If you would look on the side of one of the pieces right here, there is a square that is 2 inches, a 2 inch square, and you want to measure that and make sure your printer is printing the full size. And if it's not, you'll need to adjust that in your settings for the printer and for the printed page in that. So make sure that you always, no matter what pattern it is, it either has a 1 inch, and this one particularly has a 2 inch square, to make sure that your printer is printing that as it should be printed. Then once you have all of the pieces and you keep them in order, coming off, then these arrows are very helpful, and so is the picture, just so that you can see which pieces go together. She has done the pattern in very large black lines, which is really good, and you'll see in a minute why that's going to be a helpful thing. So I pasted it all together. Once I had it taped together, then I have a pattern for putting it onto my white cloth. And here is, I took my yard of fabric that came in your kit, or muslin, or whatever you'd like to use, and I traced that onto I just laid it over, taped it down with painter's tape, and then I drew that pattern with I used my friction pen. Not totally wise to do that, because every time you heat it and when you start putting your pieces on, but I'm only going to touch them right in the center part to begin with, just to tack them down, and then I'll go back and iron the whole thing. So a pencil, whatever marking tool that you want to use, you're going to face up, put that onto your muslin. So that works well, and the black lines are easy to see. So let me put that aside for right now. And then you're going to take your pattern, you're going to turn it over, and now your pattern is reversed. And there's one suggestion that I would make that I didn't do, and I really should have, because it creates an issue a little bit down the road. Cut around each of your pattern squares on these lines, so that they don't overlap in the back, because that overlapping you can't always see, and it gets really difficult, especially down into this part of the rooster here. So go ahead and cut those, and then tape them together evenly. So that's the one bit of advice that I would give to you. So now you're going to trace this onto the back side of your pattern, and use a wide Sharpie marker to do that, so it's nice and black and you're able to see that really well. And when you do that, let me grab the next piece. And I actually started cutting this out. You want to draw your lines, because you're going to trace this onto your double-sided fusible, and we'll talk about the double-sided fusible in just a minute. So you're going to want to have these double lines, and the reason for that being, once you've done that reverse and you've traced it onto the reverse onto your, and this is not reversed, by the way. I messed up the first time, and I had to go back and redo it, and I don't want you to do that. But I did want to show you that the lines here make a difference in terms of that. So here it is. I picked up the wrong one. So here it is done correctly on this page, where I have traced along both of the lines on either side of those wide Sharpie marker lines. And so now on my fusible that I have taped together, I have my pattern complete for that. All right. So now what I did is I went through and I put my numbers on my pattern. So I started with that first color, and that was number 1, and it's a sky. And I put my arrows so I knew which way was up. And, you know, this over here, 2 was sky, and I just, you know, made sure that I wrote it wherever it was and did the arrows. And I kept working my way through that. So 1, 2, and 3 were sky, and the clouds were 4, 5, and 6, and so on as I moved through this. Now, as I cut this apart, that's going to be your next job, is to cut this apart. But let me stop for just a minute and look and see if there were any questions up to this point. All right, lots of highs. Thank you, guys. It's so nice to see, you know, your names from week to week. Yes, what I'm showing is the fabric key that is included with the kit. You don't necessarily have that as far as your pattern. The pattern is simply the sheets of the chicken, and then you can choose your own fabrics for the rest of it. And I'm sorry I didn't make that clear. And somebody said they can't seem to get the pattern. And I think Kristen is there and jumping on that. Yeah, that 404, when it pops up, it is frustrating. All right, for those who are having some issues, we'll try to, of downloading the pattern, we'll try to figure out a way. Oh, right there, Kristen's already on it. And she's got the new pattern link there. So be sure to take a look at that. All right, so you have downloaded your pattern, you have taped it together, you have then you have reversed it, traced it on the reverse side, you have taped your double-sided fusible. And I want to talk a little bit about the double-sided fusible. One of the things when I'm working on pieces like this where I may be doing some thread painting or adding, you know, my quilting that I'm going to hang on a wall, or I want to actually use it for something, I want my fusible to be very light and easily worked with. Let's put it that way. So I really want to come back to this Quilter Select, not an Apple Stick, it's the Apple Web Plus. And this is the fusible that I really highly recommend. And number one, it's got paper on one side of it, and the other side is the actual glue. And if you look carefully at this, let me see if I can peel it back so you can see. It's the same, it's just a sheet of glue. I don't know if you can see that or not. But it's just a web of glue on there. But what this does is that it makes it very easy to work with and deal with when you're doing your double-sided fusible. and it's not going to give you that heaviness that some of the other fusibles give you. But you're welcome to use whatever double-sided fusible. So once this is pressed down onto the back of your fabric, you would remove your paper, and all you have left is that little web of glue. And using an applique pressing sheet, you don't even know it's there. When the fabric is completed, it's almost as though nothing at all is in your quilt. It's really lightweight and works well for that. So that's the Select Apple Web Plus, and that's what I've used on this here to make it work. So but you're not ready quite yet for using or pressing the fusible, because now this next step, once you've traced it and you've got those double lines everywhere, and I just noticed I don't have a double line there, so I'm going to have to go back and correct that, and here as well. So everywhere those double lines, because when we cut this apart, we don't necessarily want the fabric to overlap too much, because this is where our bias tape is going to go, and that's why it's a thick black line in there. And so you're going to cut each of these pieces apart, and what I am planning to do then this week is, as I cut these pieces apart, I'm going to put them in stacks with the correct color of fabric. And that's why it was very helpful for me to go ahead and get these all numbered, so that I knew exactly which fabrics were going to go where and which numbers those fabrics were, so I could put them and paper clip those together with the correct fabric that I'm going to use in each of those places. So that was really helpful. And if you did not purchase the kit and you're going to choose your own fabrics for this project, then I would do the same thing. Wherever you're going to put those fabrics, number them, and put little squares of your fabrics that you've chosen and number them, so that you would know where they're going to fit into the puzzle once you're done. So for this week then, there's several things that you need to do. You need to trace the non-reverse drawing on fabric, that background fabric underneath, and that's for placement when you get the pieces taken apart, and to put the bias tape on. And then the reverse drawing, trace that, and then once you get that trace so that you can see the lines, you are going to then trace onto your fusible web. And that's why this fusible web is so wonderful. It's lightweight, but it has paper on one side, so you can mark it. And you're going to cut apart the fusible between the traced shapes on your pattern and place them together by fabric. And if you want to take the next step and you're ready to do that, and you've got the time, you can go ahead and fuse those onto the back side of your fabric. And that's where I would say let it be, because next week then we will continue to talk about then how to put that all together onto that background fabric, and we'll also show you how to use the bias tape and get that in so that there's no end sticking out, there's no issues with that bias tape on there. So I found that this took time. It didn't go real fast with tracing it. Basically, you're tracing it three times, getting it printed, taping it all together, getting the fusible web, the double-sided fusible taped together. All of that, the prep work took some time, so that I would say that will keep you probably fairly busy for this week in terms of setting up, and then we can put the pattern and together, and you'll see how easy it comes. together once you do that, which is really a lot of fun. I will have to say, I'm really excited to start putting it all together. I've been doing some practice ones, and I did the other piece, um, which I didn't reverse, which was a big mistake. But you're not going to make that mistake because I did, and hopefully you won't do the same thing that I did. All right, let me go back. She's given you, can I use paper for paper piecing when you reverse it? We're not paper piecing. We are actually doing fusible applique. So, and so you would need a fusible, a double-sided fusible for that. And oh, Cindy, thank you. I did not mention that also what is exceptional about the Apple Web Plus is that it does not gunk up the needle like some of the fusibles can, where you need to have a cotton ball or something with alcohol on it to wipe down your needle from time to time. So there's still some issues with the pattern. We'll keep working with you on that. And Bridget, you're absolutely right. It's very much like cutting glass, the stained glass. I tried that once many years ago, and it is similar, and I think you're going to enjoy this. And the fabrics that were purchased, if you bought the kit, these wonderful batiks, and if you need solids or reading solids or colors like this in your stash, I would highly recommend this, because this would be wonderful to have. And I'm already excited because now I have a few colors, because you're going to have on some of these fabrics some leftover fabric, and a couple of the colors I already know. I'm not going to be using all of it, so I actually have the fabric that I really want to have in my stash for that project. So I'm excited about that. So if you need to, the kit is well worth purchasing on that. And Kristen says they do have a few kits left, so that's a good thing. All right, so that is what we need to do this week for setting up for the actual putting the pieces together and putting on the bias tape, which will give it that stained glass look. And we will talk about how to finish the quilt and some possible things to do in terms of quilting it. So I look forward to that part of it, because that's where it gets really fun. All the tracing is a setup and preparation, but the fun will start next week. So have a great one. Enjoy. If you're still, working on summer, enjoy that last time of summer before the fall sets in and we get going on some other projects and stuff. So have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.